Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the Rust movie shooting case, including the trial of Alec Baldwin? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, including the timeline of the incident, move to a summary of the trial, then offer my analysis. In October 2021, Alec Baldwin was functioning as both an actor and a producer in a Western titled Rust. The movie, which had a budget of about $7 million, was being shot on the Bonanza Creek Ranch in Bonanza City, New Mexico. This is just south of Santa Fe. On October 21, the filming of the movie was on day number 12. Not long after lunch, Alec Baldwin was rehearsing scene number 118, which featured his character, Harland Rust, drawing a single-action revolver from a shoulder holster as he sits in a pew inside a small church. The revolver was a replica of a Colt single-action Army chambered in .45 long. It had been loaded by the armorer and prop master Hannah Gutierrez Reed and left on a cart. Apparently, Hannah believed she had loaded the revolver with dummy rounds, that is, cartridges that do not contain propellant. In reality, one of the cartridges was a live round. The assistant director, Dave Halls, picked the revolver up from the cart. It was his responsibility to check the weapon before giving it to the actor. Dave later said that he did not check all the chambers or could not remember if he did. He handed the firearm to Alec Baldwin and declared it to be a cold gun, meaning it was not loaded with cartridges containing propellant. Alec Baldwin started the rehearsal without checking the weapon personally. At about 1:48 p.m., as crew members were repositioning a camera to remove a shadow, Alec talked about how he was going to draw the weapon. He said, "So I guess I'm going to take this out, pull it, and go bang." As the weapon was pointed at the cinematographer, Helena Hutchins, Alec fired a single round from the revolver, which struck Helena, passed through her, and injured the director, Joel Souza. Helena did not survive. Joel was treated at a hospital and released. An investigation determined that only 3 people handled the revolver used in the lethal shooting: Hannah Gutierrez Reed, who loaded the revolver; Dave Halls, who handed the revolver to Alec Baldwin; and, of course, Alec Baldwin, who fired the revolver. The state argued that even if one of these people had properly performed their job, no one would have died. On January 31, 2023, prosecutors in New Mexico charged Alec Baldwin and Hannah Gutierrez Reed with involuntary manslaughter. On March 31, 2023, Dave Halls pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor charge of negligent use of a deadly weapon. He received 6 months of probation. The charge against Alec Baldwin was dropped in April 2023. However, that would not be the end of the case against him. On January 19, 2024, he was once again indicted on a charge of involuntary manslaughter. Hannah Gutierrez Reed went to trial first. She was convicted of involuntary manslaughter on March 6, 2024. Over 5 weeks later, she was sentenced to 18 months in prison. Now moving to a summary of Alec Baldwin's trial. On Tuesday, July 9, 2024, Alec's trial started. Opening statements were delivered the next day, July 10. The state argued that Alec violated the cardinal rules of firearm safety by pointing a gun at a person and pulling the trigger. The revolver was in perfect order and did not malfunction. He did not check the revolver, and he pulled the trigger, despite his claim that he never pulled the trigger. Furthermore, he did not follow the rules even before the fatal shooting. Alec was playing make-believe with a real gun in a real-life workplace. The defense argued that Hannah Gutierrez Reed and Dave Halls were responsible because they were both in charge of firearm safety on the set. Alec Baldwin was an actor playing the role of Harland Rust. This character could act in ways which were normally lethal, but those actions would not actually be lethal on a movie set. The cardinal rules of firearm safety were not the cardinal rules on a movie set. The debate over whether Alec pulled the trigger was academic. This case was really about who loaded the revolver with the live cartridge. On Thursday, July 11, 2024, a crime scene technician testified about the actions of a retired police officer named Troy Teskey. In March of 2024, when Hannah's trial was underway, Troy had delivered a box of ammunition to the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office. Troy told the police that he thought the ammunition might somehow be related to the Rust shooting. The crime scene technician stored the cartridges under a different case number, thereby separating them from the Rust investigation. The defense never received the ammunition to examine. This failure to turn over evidence, as required by law, was a major development during Alec Baldwin's trial. His defense filed a motion to dismiss the case with prejudice, accusing the state of hiding evidence. They argued that if the cartridges dropped off by Troy were somehow connected to the shooting, then maybe Hannah wasn't guilty after all. The prosecution had argued that Alec should have known Hannah was incompetent, but if she was not guilty, maybe she was not incompetent. On Friday, July 12, 2024, one of the prosecutors, Erlinda Johnson, believed the case should be dismissed based on the state withholding evidence. Before any ruling was made by the judge on the defense motion, Erlinda resigned from the case. Outside the presence of the jury, the judge considered the defense motion. She put on latex gloves and examined the cartridges. The judge believed that 3 of the cartridges resembled cartridges found on the movie set after the shooting. The defense argued that the state intentionally concealed evidence, saying, quote, "They buried it. They put it under a different case with a different number," unquote. The lead prosecutor, Carrie Morrissey, took the stand and tried to explain what happened. She said, quote, "It was my impression that they did not match the live rounds from the set of Rust," unquote. Apparently, Carrie had seen a photograph of the ammunition. The judge determined that the state intentionally and deliberately withheld evidence that could shed light on how live cartridges managed to get on the set of the Rust movie. She said, quote, "If this conduct does not rise to the level of bad faith, it certainly comes so near to bad faith as to show signs of scorching prejudice," unquote. The judge went on to say that the discovery violation represented a needless and incurable delay. A dismissal with prejudice was warranted to ensure the integrity of the judicial system. The jury had already been sworn, jeopardy was attached, and disclosure was so late that it undermined the defendant's preparation for trial. The defense motion to dismiss with prejudice was granted. Alec Baldwin was free to go, and he can never be charged in this case again. Now moving to my analysis. Prior to the dismissal, the state's case was already questionable. Some people have suggested that the prosecution of Alec Baldwin seemed like it was political and not really based on the evidence available. This brings me to the question, was Alec Baldwin guilty of involuntary manslaughter? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that he was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. According to the state, Alec Baldwin had violated firearm safety rules prior to the lethal shooting. For example, while on the movie set, he allegedly pointed a firearm at a human being. Immediately before the lethal shooting, he did this again. At this time, he also pulled the trigger. This is the only way the gun could have fired, no matter what Alec said. Alec was not only an actor in the movie, he was a producer. There were safety problems on the set which had caused widespread concern. Alec may have set a tone consistent with disregarding safety. Moving to the exculpatory factors, it is customary for normally unacceptable behaviors to be acceptable on a movie set. Movies seek to create situations that look dangerous. The scenes must be convincing. It must appear as though terrible things are actually happening. This can involve many different circumstances depending on the movie. For example, an aircraft shooting down another aircraft, ramming a motor vehicle into a pedestrian, a man striking another man with a baseball bat, a person trying to escape a fire by jumping through a window of a house, or soldiers firing a cannon at a fort. Certain workers on movie sets have the responsibility to create these dangerous-looking scenes without hurting anyone. They follow established rules of safety to accomplish this goal. The job of the actor is to act, not to double as a safety administrator of some type. Alec Baldwin is clearly not any type of firearm expert. One time he referred to a semi-automatic pistol as a contemporary gun, and like many people at his trial, repeatedly referred to cartridges as bullets. Alec's job is to follow instructions issued by the people in charge of safety. Right before the lethal shooting, Dave Halls told Alec the revolver was safe. According to Alec, he only pointed the weapon at Helena because she told him to. The shooting was not recorded, but earlier the cameras were recording as Alec was being directed to point the weapon. This supports his assertion. The state did not know how the live cartridges actually ended up on the movie set, and it's likely they will never know. Was Hannah really to blame, or did someone sabotage the movie? When considering the evidence, do I think that Alec Baldwin is guilty of involuntary manslaughter? No, he was not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Furthermore, I think his prosecution was malicious. This was an incredibly weak case, which now calls the case against Hannah Gutierrez-Reed into question as well. The state simply could not figure out what happened, but they went forward with filing charges anyway. Helena's death was tragic, but that doesn't mean that everyone who touched the revolver that killed her should be convicted of a crime. Moving to my last question, what do I think about the dismissal of the charge against Alec Baldwin? To start with, it's worth noting that one prosecutor, Erlinda Johnson, dropped out. She did the right thing. There was an ethical issue, and she did not continue with the case. As far as the other prosecutor, Carrie Morrissey, her behavior was unwise. There is the sense that she just couldn't let this go. She was trying to achieve glory and desperately wanted to convict a celebrity. As I mentioned, many people in this trial did not have a good understanding of firearms. Carrie somehow believed that she could look at a photograph of the cartridges dropped off by the retired police officer Troy and determine they were nothing like the cartridges on the movie set. So, all of a sudden, she is a firearm expert. It was her job to turn over the evidence. Not doing so is a Brady violation. The state broke the rules. I agree with the judge in this case. The behavior of the prosecution was intentional, deliberate, and incurable. A dismissal with prejudice was the only logical move. The criminal justice system cannot afford to offer a slap on the wrist when a prosecutor commits a Brady violation. Any sanction other than dismissal will encourage prosecutors to take their chances and play it fast and loose with the rules. Now moving to my final thoughts. As I've said in other videos on this case, Alec Baldwin is not guilty of a crime, but he does bear some moral responsibility. He knew that he was handling a real gun, but he did not know basic firearm safety rules or simply chose to disregard them. Real guns don't turn into magical guns just because they're on a movie set. The rules for handling firearms remain the same no matter what. Even though Alec Baldwin made a mistake, the probability of this tragedy happening was unbelievably low. Let's take a look at the estimated odds associated with each unlikely event in this case and calculate the overall probability of this lethal shooting. What were the chances that live cartridges would be on a movie set? Wherever there are real guns, real cartridges are often nearby, but these cartridges are not supposed to be on movie sets. I would say maybe 1 in 1,000. What were the chances that one of those cartridges would actually be loaded into a real firearm that was used in the film? If the live cartridges were already on a movie set, it makes sense that someone might load them into a weapon. But whoever was responsible for safety could easily spot a live cartridge. I would say maybe 1 in 100 for this risk. How likely was it that the firearm would then be pointed at a human being and the trigger pulled? Real guns are not supposed to be pointed at people during filming, but it certainly happens. I would say there was a 1 in 100 chance here as well. If there was only one live cartridge, what is the probability that the hammer would drop on that live cartridge? The revolver in this case had a cylinder containing 6 chambers, so 1 in 6. Finally, what are the odds that the bullet would actually strike a person and cause a fatal wound? Considering how often people miss in real-life shooting events and how often people survive being struck, I would say 1 in 5. Again, these are just rough estimates. To calculate the overall probability of the fatal shooting, all these individual probabilities need to be multiplied. This gives us a risk of 1 in 300 million. It's hard to view Alec as some type of horrible person when the odds of a fatality were so incredibly small. This is one of those situations where everything went wrong and everyone failed to take safety regulations seriously. Alec Baldwin was the last line of defense, not legally required to act, but morally required. He failed to do this, and the weight of that failure will eat away at him like metal afflicted by rust. Those are my thoughts on the Rust shooting. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comments section. They consistently generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.